information about me, you can check my profile page at www.farmersnational.com/Terry Jensen. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we start. Please feel free to type in any questions that you have as we move along during the presentation. We'll do questions and answers at the end so that we stay on schedule and you can hear the next presentation on time. And if you are on the phone, if you could please put your phone on mute, and please do not put your phone on hold. That would enable us to hear all your background music or your tones. So as in my introduction, I've been handling land transactions from the real estate appraisal and auction standpoint over the past 31 years in South Central Minnesota. My safety thoughts then are based on those experiences in Minnesota. The title, Don't Get in the Pen with the Bull, was meant to grab your attention and be somewhat funny. Safety, though, for rural land professionals is not a laughing matter. As land professionals, we don't necessarily think about safety practices, but we just do what needs to be done. Safety reflects man, animals, weather, and situations. I feel extremely blessed. I've had good experiences and good people that I've worked with, and someone's watched over me all the times I've been with strangers in a truck driving in backwoods and fields and their homes. So I'd like to walk you through the land listing and sale process to talk about some rural safety procedures. First, though, let's do a quick poll to see how many of you handle rural land transactions. If you want to take a moment, click on the yes or no. We have the poll open. And so we'll give you a moment to click on that, and we'll go from there. We'll just give you another second and we'll see what our totals are. Okay, we'll end the poll. I'm not seeing the results, but I'm hoping some of you answered and took part in this. And hopefully some of you are actually handling rural land. If you are, this might be a brush up for you. For those who have not experienced land, working with land, this may be eye-opening. So we'll move on to the next slide. I apologize. In a listing situation for rural land or property, it is often located far enough away from our home or our office that we'll plan on viewing the land as well as meeting with the owner or the seller at the time of the viewing. So what does this mean from a safety standpoint? It means that you're going into a stranger's home, often in a remote area. So how do you ensure safety before you leave for the appointment, on the way to the appointment, as you drive into the yard, and as you meet with the owner or sellers, and as you view the acreage? We'll start with before leaving for the appointment. Believe it or not, there are a lot of things you can do in preparation for meeting with someone at their home or at their land. Always, always obtain their contact info when you are going to meet someone in a rural area. Obtain their name or names of all parties, cell, office, and home phone numbers, where they live, make, mode, color of the vehicle they drive if you are meeting them at the property. The vehicle information sounds like it wouldn't be needed, but I can't tell you how many times I've been parked in field approach and have been out taking photos or looking at the land before the owner arrived, and bless their hearts, one or two neighbors will stop to ask what you're doing. So the vehicle information is a good thing to obtain. It's also good to have your business card or realtor ID card with you when you, excuse me, when people stop to ask what you're doing. I was going to list an 80-acre tract that had about a 10-acre building site on it with a house, barn, and other outbuildings. So in trying to put the BPO together, I was driving comps and ended up taking a photo of a rural farm site, and kids were out playing in the yard. This was like the third time I had driven by to make sure there weren't kids in the yard, and I finally just had to take the photo. Well, I received a call from the police that evening asking what I was doing, why I was taking pictures of a rural site with kids in the yard. I had to explain that I was a realtor, driving comps, etc. I had to fax my business card and provide other ID that I actually was a realtor and what the subject property was that I was hopefully listing. So some of the fun things that we run into out in the country. Before leaving for the appointment, share that contact information you obtained with a colleague, partner, or with someone. And I'd recommend partnering with a colleague if you will be meeting with multiple people at their home in a rural area. This is not only a safety issue, but it can actually be very helpful with the listing presentation if there are 4 or more people. One of you can be the lead speaker, the other taking notes, handing out materials, and watching to see if anyone's eyes are glazing over and you need to jump in to clarify a point. Also, obtain directions and prepare maps of the property, the meeting venue, any comps, rentals, competitive listings that you plan on driving. Ask the owner about any pets you need to be aware of. And again, share all of this information with a colleague. Be sure also to share the day, the date, and time of your appointment. When I was on an appointment by myself, most of the time I would ask a colleague or my husband to call me 10 or 15 minutes after I should have arrived at the appointment. We had a code word that would signal if I felt I would be in trouble. This should be a word that you would use in a normal conversation versus yelling, "Help!" That's not a good thing. Just a couple of other items in the before you leave category. We don't always think to dress appropriately for the rural areas that we'll be in. Snakes and ticks are prevalent in many rural areas. So wear boots, pants tucked into socks or boots. Use permethrin for tick protection. If you place that on your clothing and not on your skin, typically lasts through about 6 washings. You can Google permethrin. It's spelled P-E-R-M-E-T-H-R-I-N. Wikipedia has good information in regard to how and when it's used, or you can go to https://sawyer.com/products/permethrin-premium and etc. I can put that on the end of the website when we're finished so that you have the information. If any of you have had to pull ticks off yourself, you know it's worth dressing appropriately. I had a colleague contract Lyme disease from a tick bite, and they dealt with the Lyme disease for about the next year. Lyme disease causes major headaches, joint pain, memory loss, and feeling tired all the time. So the saying, an ounce of prevention, take it to heart. Again, on your checklist of items to do before you leave for an appointment, add to check that your cell phone is charged, that you have all of the items you need for your appointment, including camera, listing forms, questionnaires, and of course, agency disclosure forms if this is your first substantive contact. Have a survival kit in your trunk that is appropriate to your area. I always had 3 pairs of boots in my truck, a pair for mud, a low pair of boots for a little bit of snow, and a pair of high boots for deep snow. Likewise, extra hats, gloves, earmuffs. I get earaches easily and have needed earmuffs in the summer if it was a cold, windy Minnesota day. And if you feel very unsafe, do not hesitate to ask the sheriff to check on you. Provide the same information to the sheriff as you would to a colleague or spouse. I listed a farm in southern Minnesota, and the brother of the siblings who were selling was extremely angry. He had already received his inheritance and had no ownership in the farm I listed. He made several threatening calls and emails to me, enough that I asked the local sheriff to be at the town hall where we held the auction. Don't be afraid to ask for protection. It's better to be safe than sorry. Lastly, before you leave for the appointment, particularly if you will be out in a field or woods, plan to wear blaze orange, MnDOT, glow-in-the-dark lime green, bright red, anything that will distinguish you from an animal while you're in a wooded area. I have all sorts of stories I could tell on this standpoint. I've been shot at 3 times. Not sure if this was intentional, if they just didn't like realtors, or if these were stray events. But a 30-06 bullet can carry about 2 miles. So especially during hunting season, wear bright colored clothing. If you are unable to meet a potential buyer on the rural property during hunting season, specify that no guns or dogs are allowed during their viewing of the land. And I know, of course, no one has ever done these things before. Of course, I haven't either. On the way to the appointment and viewing of the property, as land professionals and traveling on less traveled roads, we have a tendency to think we can talk on the phone, write, drive at the same time. Likewise, while driving, I'm probably trying to read a plat map to see if I've passed the intersection I need to be. I may take a photo as I roll by. I'm probably driving with my knee. Thank goodness I never went off the road, but can tell you I've swerved and headed towards the ditch several times while doing one or more of these things at the same time. So not good safety practice. Do use maps, road updates, plat maps, Google Maps, whichever you're more comfortable with, paper or online, to save time and prevent ending up in an unfamiliar area, being in an area you would prefer not to be, or being on a road closed due to snow or some other natural disaster. I've also learned while driving uphill on all those empty little gravel roads out in the country to stay on my side of the road versus driving down the middle of the road. It sounds like common sense, right? But again, something you just don't think about because you can and do drive down the middle of the road on the flat. It only takes one time of someone barreling over the top of a hill and almost hitting you to drive appropriately going uphill. Do also drive a vehicle that can handle the terrain you'll encounter. It may be rough, muddy, or there may be high foliage or tough stubble you need to drive over. And corn stubble can puncture regular tire treads, and I can attest to that from experience. Do be aware in very dry conditions also not to park over dry foliage, as the heat from your vehicle could start a fire. This didn't happen to me, but it did happen to a colleague. It was the end of the truck as well as half the crop in the field before the fire department could get there. With road safety, have an app on your phone for weather alerts in the event of a tornado, hail, blizzard, or other weather hazard. Be prepared for winter weather if that's in something that you deal with in your area. Again, have a survival kit in your trunk. A blanket, extra hats, gloves, boots, non-perishable food, as well as water. In the pre-cell phone days, yes, there were such times, my husband and I drove through a tornado. We were in the Twin Cities in Minnesota on our way home from a volleyball tournament. One of our neighbors called to let us know that there were tornadoes in our area. They would run over to our house to get our daughter, and that we needed to be careful on the way home. Well, by the time we hit St. Peter, which is a small community about 12 miles north of our home, the sky was black, the rain was extremely heavy, and the winds were just awful. Then the sirens went off, and we debated if we should stop or just press on. We did elect to press on, and we're very thankful that is what we decided to do. This was the 1998 tornado that destroyed over half the city of St. Peter. A young boy was sucked out of their vehicle not very far from where we were driving, and he was killed. So again, I feel extremely blessed, and I do not ever want to be that close to that type of weather again. So I highly recommend a weather app that has alerts on it. And I'm just going to talk about tornadoes a little bit. Again, in the Midwest, we deal with these a lot. So just going to talk a little bit about some myths and facts. And these are actually from a State Farm article that I found. One of the myths, taking shelter under an overpass during a tornado will protect me. Well, in fact, overpasses and bridges can actually concentrate airflow from a tornado and become extremely dangerous, like a wind tunnel. Hiding under an overpass may subject you to severe injuries from flying debris or even cause you to be blown out into the storm itself. Another myth, the safest place to hide in a storm is the southwest corner of the basement. Fact, it is a better bet to take shelter in a small, windowless, interior room on the lowest floor of a structure. You can protect yourself from flying debris by taking shelter under a heavy desk or mattress or a sturdy stairwell. The last myth that we'll talk about, I could outrun a tornado in my car. Well, the fact is that while an average ground speed of a tornado is about 30 miles per hour, tornado winds can exceed 200 miles an hour. So you probably can't outrun the tornado. If you are out in the open and the tornado is a long way away, it may be possible to drive out of harm's way. After detecting the direction of the storm's movement, drive at a right angle away from the tornado. Now for a little audience poll so that you have a break listening to me for a minute. We'll try and take this survey and see if we can get this to show up. So if you want to take this quick poll, the first question, how many of you have safety procedures in place? You can check yes or no. And the second question, after this discussion, how many of you think you will add some safety precautions to your protocols? I'll just give you a couple of moments since there are a couple of questions. Okay. Looks like people are just finishing up with the second question. So we'll wait for 1 second. All right. It looks like some of you have some safety procedures in place, as well as that several of you think you might be adding some safety procedures to your protocols. So that's a great thing. Thank you for your participation. We've talked about what you can do before you leave for an appointment and what to do on the way to the appointment. Now, as you drive into the yard and arrive at the property, and I can speak to the items on this slide, it's not a good thing. Early in my career, I never locked my car doors. Purse, laptop, bag phone. Yep, I'm old enough. I had one of the first bag phones. Everything was always on the front seat of my vehicle. I had to meet a neighbor at the home that I was appraising. We both went into the house. The neighbor had to run back to their home to retrieve some paperwork, and on the way back, a kid was getting into my vehicle. The neighbor yelled and the kid ran, thank goodness, or I would have lost everything and had to deal with all the credit card issues and all of those things. So keep your keys on your person, always lock your car doors, and store other things in your trunk. Another story, and this is after this first story I told you, it was winter in Minnesota. I had on boots, gloves, coat, all the accoutrements for the weather, and had completed all the outside work needed. I started driving back to my office and I was hot, so I stopped the car, popped the trunk so that I could put my boots and everything away. I always had a box in my trunk so that I could keep everything neat and not have everything get wet and icky. Since I had become used to now locking my vehicle doors, I evidently automatically locked the door, truck running. Of course, cell phone and keys were in the truck. I walked to the nearest farmhouse, great people, also named Jensen, No relation though. I was able to call my husband to bring another set of keys. Sometimes weird things turn out well, as I ended up appraising their property for them 2 years after this happened. This is a true story. So lock your doors, but remember to have your keys and cell phone on your person. As you drive into the yard, bared teeth like this would be your first clue you are not welcome here. I always try to remember to ask if the owner has dogs, if the animals are friendly, and what their names are. Or ask the owners to put the dogs in a barn, a kennel, or other shelter if they believe their dog is not friendly. Consider asking the owners to be on the premises when you are going to arrive at the property. Another hint, when driving into a rural area, wait a bit before getting out of the truck to give dogs plenty of time to come to your vehicle and adjust. Talk to them out of the window before you depart your vehicle, but not if they look like this photo. Early in my career, I was working with a landowner to develop and then sell some of their lakeshore property. We were to meet at their cabin, which was set back quite a distance from the access road. I parked my truck and was about halfway between the road and the cabin, and a huge husky came running at me from behind the cabin. I was terrified, unarmed, with nothing but my portfolio, camera, and a pen. Thank goodness the husky was extremely friendly and would probably have licked me to death, but lesson learned. So we've discussed what to do before the appointment, on the way to the appointment, and pulling into the yard. So now, as you meet with the owner or sellers, some of these are sounding kind of repetitive, aren't they? Do have your car keys on your person. Lock your vehicle. If you're inspecting a home, barn, outbuilding, etc., always let the client go first. It's easy enough to say, you know where the lights are, you lead the way. Always leave yourself an exit strategy. If you feel uncomfortable in doing something, your intuition is an asset. Trust your instincts. I was listing and selling 160 acres that had a building site with a home, barn, and other outbuildings, and the owner wasn't able to meet me, but told me where to look for a key so that I could get in. When I arrived, there were vehicles in the driveway, and I could see movement in the house. Something just didn't feel right, and I immediately turned my vehicle around and went back out to the road. I called the owner to see if someone was now going to be home. He said that no one should be at the house. I called the sheriff, who luckily was about 5 minutes away. I told you I've been blessed. The sheriff arrived and had backup coming in 10 minutes, and the sheriff had security at the front and back doors and apprehended 2 guys who were stealing items in the home. These 2 guys had been breaking into homes in that area over the past month. So go with your instincts. For those of you in the Midwest, particularly if you appraise or sell farms with bins, bin safety is a huge concern. Please do not climb into a bin without safety harness or safety equipment. Do not enter a bin while it is being loaded or unloaded. And if you do have to enter a bin, be sure that the power is turned off and have people standing by outside. We want you to come out alive and well. Drones, the newest and latest and greatest toy and technology, and for commercial use, this is key right now. The National Association provides information on a regular basis, and the link on the slide will provide you with answers to frequently asked questions on the use of drones for commercial use. I'm only going to say a couple of words on this at this point, since the FAA has not finalized rules for commercial use yet. Be sure you or the company flying the drone have the Section 333 exemption. And in addition to the exemption, there's also a separate certificate of authorization. Both of these items are needed, and they will give you the information that says what activity the drone use is approved for, what location it's approved for, and then the timeline for use for the purpose that was specified. This used to be 12 months. FAA has talked about changing that to 24 months. So we'll see what the new regulations are that come out. And for additional information, I've listed 2 additional websites. So the Realtor link on the previous slide, as well as these sites, are those you might want to bookmark to stay up to date on drones for commercial use. And then just a little bit of promotion. Realtors Land Institute is offering a hot topic webinar entitled Video, the Future of Real Estate Marketing and Using Drones to Grow Your Business. This webinar will be given on October 28th from noon to 1 o'clock Central Time. Registration information on that can be found at rliland.com and look under Hot Topic Web Seminars. This slide shows just a sampling of safety apps that are available to get you started. These are actually off the National Association's Realtor Safety Program website. I'm just going to go over a couple of these. You can see that some of them are free, some of them have a year registration, some a monthly fee, and all of them are designed to help keep you safe. For instance, Agents Armor, it's designed for real estate agents to alert brokers or your emergency contacts and authorities with everything they need to know about your appointments. The app allows you to let your broker know you're on a showing. Then throughout the showing, a safety alert checks in to make sure you're safe. If you do not respond, your broker, your emergency contacts, and the authorities are notified with your GPS coordinates. Be Monitored is very similar to that, as is HomeSnap. MyForce is a personal security system for your phone, and it notifies the response team just by pushing a button. And Be Safe, another one, sets up a timer mode with an alarm when you haven't checked in. A Guardian alert button sends your location via GPS and a video of what is happening, and they send this to your emergency contacts. So these are just some apps that are out there. There are a lot of other ones. We're not trying to endorse anything, but just wanted to give you something to be able to start and search and be safe. Finally, you've prepared to go on your appointment. You've driven to the appointment. You've arrived and met with the owners. Now, as you view the property, again, lock your vehicle. Have your keys on your person. Have your cell phone on your person and safety numbers dialed in. Wear appropriate clothing, footwear, pants, boots. And in hunting season particularly, be sure to be colorful. And while this isn't a safety issue for you, if you allow a potential buyer to view a rural land tract during hunting season and for some reason you are just unable to accompany them, please ask what day, date, and time they plan on being on the property and provide that information to the owner or the seller. Always remind that prospective buyer to wear blaze orange and that they may walk the property, no vehicles, no dogs, and no firearms while walking the property. Again, use common sense and do not get close to animals who do not know you. Even when animals know you, they can be dangerous. I just had a colleague, this is very recent, who raised a bull from a calf and was just recently in the pen with the bull. Something happened and the bull got angry, charged my colleague, trampled him, and luckily he was finally able to roll out under the fence and is alive, but with a lot of broken bones, bumps, and bruises. So, use common sense and don't get in the pen with the bull. Take safety seriously and enjoy being a land professional. If you do have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I've provided all of my contact info, and we appreciate that you attended today's safety seminar, and we will be able to go over any questions that you all have, if there are any. I will have that open. So does anyone have any questions? And also I wanted to remind everyone, we appreciate that you took time to listen and also participate with the polls that we had today. And then also to remind you that the next presentation will begin at noon and that you'll be able to access that presentation in the Realtor University email that you were sent. So we'll have it open for questions. We have a question from Byron. What are some safety devices when there's no cell coverage in rural areas? That is a very good question. That's when you hopefully know the area that you're in and you have taken someone with you. Because when there's no cell coverage, I don't really know of any other thing that you can do other than just to have someone accompany you and that you're prepared. So I don't have any other technology that I can tell you that works. What are some issues with concealed carry pistols? Hopefully you have a permit. Hopefully you've taken the classes in order to be able to, handle those appropriately. And otherwise, in some areas, you definitely need to carry some kind of weapon, if nothing else, just for snakes and, other animals that you might run into. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, are there any other questions? We have another question. How common are drones for agricultural and forest appraisals? The use of drones is becoming a huge issue, and again, for commercial property, they are not approved by FAA. You do have to have the Section 333 exemption and the COA in order to be able to use a drone for commercial purposes. And again, the COA typically spells out what the location is and how long a time period you can use it. It is becoming way more common, and more people want to use it and want the FAA to move forward with completing the rules and regs on use of drones for commercial use. So we're hopeful that that'll happen soon, because way more people want to use drones than can at this point. Hopefully that answered your question. Another question. In some areas, we have to watch out for meth labs. Is it a good idea to carry a concealed weapon? If you run into a situation, I actually had this happen. I drove into a yard, and because I was meeting the people at their house, and it looked like everything was vacant. There was evidence of meth production, and I would not recommend. You can carry a concealed weapon, but if you see evidence that you think there's meth going on, I would just turn around and get out of there, contact the sheriff, and move forward from that direction, instead of you carrying a concealed weapon and trying to deal with somebody who's producing meth. Does Realtors Land Institute have any standard real estate forms or land seller disclosures? Some of our state chapters actually have disclosures and land forms. Otherwise, from a national standpoint, we don't, because every state deals with different topography and land issues, and we tried actually putting a disclosure together. This is probably 10 years ago or so, and it was about 20 pages long by the time we added everything for every single state. So your state RLI chapter may have some land forms or land disclosure forms, but otherwise, from a national standpoint, Realtors Land Institute does not. I have a statement here. I have seen satellite phones and emergency beacons for hikers. That might work for rural area emergencies where there's no cell coverage. That might work. Another comment. Many states have legal or medical marijuana grown on rural sites. Talk about the safety issues dealing with these types of legal crops. apologize, in Minnesota, I really haven't, or Nebraska, because I'm in Nebraska now, I really have not had to deal with this. And so I really could not speak, to this. And again, to me, if I ran across something that I thought was illegal, I would just contact the sheriff. I'd get away from the property, and I don't want to run into a situation that I can't get out of. So I would just leave the property, contact the sheriff, and I would not be dealing with any kind of safety issue then. What is the evidence for meth? A lot of times you will see all sorts of containers for fertilizer, for a lot of packages that might be, the drugs for like Sudafed and things like that. You'll see barrels and wires and all sorts of things. Again, meth. I'm very blessed to be in the Midwest because we really don't. We have good people, and we really don't have to deal with a lot of nasty things. So this, again, is something that you can look up. There are great photos on Google. And if you Google meth labs, you'll get so many things that you won't even know what to do with it. I actually had to appraise a home once that had been used as a meth lab, and it took over a year for the home to go through all of the cleanup. And even at that, they could not guarantee that the cleanup was complete. And then I just thanked God that I was not the realtor that sold that home, because I think I would have felt very guilty had a family purchased it and had children living there and not knowing if those safety procedures for the cleanup actually did a cleanup. So be careful around meth. Another question, can you give an example of safety code words one may use? Well, I don't want to give you mine. You just have to think of something that in the course of a normal conversation, it would be a word that you would normally use, but it would not tip someone off. You could say that you're waiting on a call for someone to give you a call in regard to an ad that you were putting in a paper or something, and it's on a timeline, and you could have a safety word connected with that. Just be a little creative and use something that you would use in a normal everyday conversation, but that will tip off your colleague or your spouse or your emergency contact that you're in trouble. A question, will you have a copy of the webinar information presented slides? Yes, I believe that everything will be posted on, and I can double check on that. Another question coming in, hunting season is another issue, wearing orange, etc. I don't really know what this question is. Hunting season is a huge issue. Truly, try not to be out during hunting season, and when you're working with an owner, a lot of times the owner either will be using the property themselves for hunting, or they will have leased it out to someone or given permission for someone to be on the property during hunting season. And so always make sure that you tell and communicate well with your seller so that you know and they know when someone is going to be on the property. It'll help tremendously in keeping any accidents down when people know who's going to be on the land and when during hunting season. And again, do wear bright colors. I still have a bright red coat that I wear, as well as, again, I'm from Minnesota. I did a lot of work with MnDOT, and they have this lime green that glows in the dark. And I have a vest and a hat, and I wear that. That's great. I didn't know I could move so fast to hit the ground the first time I got shot at. So, another question, not really connected with safety, but do you anticipate the new TRID closing procedures to make a big impact on appraisal practices? It might impact appraisal practice. It might not. I can try and actually respond to this question outside of this seminar since it's not really geared towards safety. We've done some research on whether or not this will impact appraisal or not, and it might just simply because the lender has to obtain the cost of an appraisal, and if that would change for some reason, you know, you find out that when you get out to the property that it's not just a piece of tillable ground, but it's something much more complex, and so the fee is going to change. It could impact the closing date on a property. Any other questions? Trying to go back and make sure I did not miss any. I'm not seeing any other questions. Again, I do want to thank you for participating and listening, and do want to again remind you that the next session will start promptly at noon, and that you can access the presentation via the Realtor University email that you were sent previously, the same as you were able to get on this presentation. And I'm not seeing any other questions, so if any of you have questions for me outside of this seminar, again, you can contact me. My direct mobile number is 507-382-0908, or you can email me or text me at that mobile number, or you can email me at terryljensenalc@cox.net. And we will look forward to having you all stay on for the next seminar. Thank you.